There is a version of parenting guilt that is not actually guilt anymore. It has been there so long, running so quietly underneath everything, that it has become something else. Not a feeling, an atmosphere, the background frequency of your parenting life. Always present, always low, always on. And because it's always there, it no longer feels like a problem. It feels like what parenting is. It feels like what caring parents feel. But there is a threshold, a specific line, between guilt that is doing something useful and guilt that is crossed into something else entirely. Something that is no longer about your child at all. This video is about that line, and the 7 signs that you crossed it, probably a long time ago. Guilt, in its original form, has a job. It fires when something happens that conflicts with your values. It points, here, this moment, this behavior, this choice. And then, when you've received the signal and done something with it, it releases. That is what guilt is supposed to do. Fire. Point. Release. What happens in chronic parenting guilt is different. The firing happens. The pointing happens. But the release never comes. Instead, the guilt accumulates. Day after day, moment after moment, it adds to a total that never resets. And here is the thing about a system that fires but never releases. Eventually, you stop noticing the individual firings. You just notice the weight, the low hum, the thing that is always there when you lie down at night and still there when you wake up in the morning. Research on rumination. The pattern of replaying and reevaluating past events consistently shows a clear distinction between productive reflection, which leads somewhere, and chronic rumination, which loops. Productive reflection. Something happened, I look at it, I learn something, I move. Chronic rumination. Something happened, I look at it again, I look at it again, and the looking changes nothing. It just maintains the pain. Most parents in this place are not reflecting anymore. They are ruminating. And they have been for long enough that they can't feel the difference. These are the 7 signs that this is where you are. Sign 1. Donald. The guilt doesn't release after you've repaired. You apologize to your child. They accept it. Things return to normal. Maybe even better than normal. The specific warmth that sometimes comes after repair. And the guilt is still there. Not quietly in the background. Still loud. Still present. Still replaying the moment as if the repair never happened. If the guilt has a job, and the job is to signal that something needs attention and you gave it attention, the guilt should soften. When it doesn't, the guilt is no longer doing its job, it is doing something else. Sign 2. Dottisnime. You feel guilty for things that are not in your control. The school drop-off where they cried, even though you held them and did everything right and they were fine 10 minutes later. The birthday party you couldn't make because of work that paid the rent. The bad day that started before you were even awake. Guilt, in its healthy form, is calibrated. It responds to choices you actually made, to moments where a different decision was available. When the guilt fires equally for the moments you controlled and the moments you never could, the calibration is gone. What's left is not a conscience, it's a trap. Sign 3. Tumsum. You feel guilty before anything has happened. You wake up in the morning and the guilt is already running. Not about yesterday. You've been through yesterday. About today. The preemptive audit. The inventory of what might go wrong, what you might do, what you should be ready to do but probably won't manage when the moment comes. When guilt is no longer a response to what happened but a prediction about what will, it has moved out of the realm of conscience and into the realm of anxiety wearing conscience's clothes. Sign 4. Sign. The guilt intensifies when things are going well. This one is quieter. Harder to catch. A good evening. Real laughter. Bedtime that went smoothly. You put them down and feel, for a moment, something close to ease. And then the guilt arrives. Not about tonight, but about all the nights that were not tonight. As if the good moment has earned you the right to feel the bad ones more sharply. As if ease is a debt, and the payment is another round of inventory. If this is familiar, that is sign 4. Sign 5. You use the guilt as a compass. It has been there so long, and it responds to everything so consistently that somewhere along the way you started letting it make decisions for you. You stay when you need to leave, because the guilt fires if you leave. You say yes when you mean no, because the guilt fires if you say no. You explain yourself, defend yourself, apologize preemptively, because the guilt fires if you don't. A compass is supposed to point towards something true. Guilt that fires at everything, including the things that are good for you and for your child, is not a compass. It is noise. And navigating by noise gets you nowhere except exhausted and further from where you meant to be. Sign 6. Sign. The guilt is loudest not during the hard moments, but in the quiet ones. You would expect to feel it most in the moment. The raised voice, the lost patience, the thing you said that you immediately wished you hadn't. And you do feel it then. But that's not when it's loudest. It's loudest at 9 p.m. when the house is quiet, when there is nothing left to manage and nowhere left to put your attention. And instead of rest, what comes is the list, starting from this morning, running backwards. The 3 a.m. inventory, even if it happens at 9 p.m., is the guilt filling the space that rest was supposed to occupy. That is not a small thing. That is the guilt taking something from you that you cannot afford to lose. Sign 7, Nomen Sums. You have started to believe that the guilt is proof you care, and that releasing it would mean releasing the caring. This is the deepest one. The belief, somewhere underneath everything, that the guilt is doing something important. That it is the feeling that separates the parents who try from the parents who don't. That if you let it go, something essential would go with it. If any part of that resonates, that is not a sign that the guilt is working. That is a sign that it has convinced you it is necessary. Those are not the same thing. So what's actually happening underneath all 7 of those signs? Your nervous system has a threat detection function. Its job is to scan for danger, signal it, and prepare you to respond. When your child is struggling, when you made a mistake, when something went wrong that you were responsible for, the threat signal fires. In most contexts, that system fires and resets. The threat passes, the signal stops, the system returns to baseline. But when the threat is something chronic, when the thing being detected is not a single event, but a sustained condition, a pattern, a fear that never fully resolves, the system can get locked. Not metaphorically, neurologically. The threat detection system stays activated because the threat it is scanning for, am I damaging my child? Am I repeating the pattern? Am I enough? Never goes away. And a nervous system locked in threat detection mode does not experience guilt as a signal anymore. It experiences guilt as a state. This is what the research on chronic stress responses consistently shows. The difference between a stress response that resolves and one that becomes structural is not about how much someone cares. It is about what the nervous system learned to expect. If you grew up in an environment where things were unpredictable, where love was conditional, or where your mistakes had real and lasting consequences, your nervous system learned to stay vigilant. It learned that the reset is not safe, that the moment you stop scanning is the moment something goes wrong. And now you are parenting, and the stakes feel as high as anything you have ever done. And the nervous system that learned never to reset is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Your nervous system is not a moral system. The guilt that fires constantly, that doesn't release, that loops, that is not evidence that you are failing. That is evidence that your threat detection system has been treating parenting as a permanent emergency. And that is something that can change, not through trying harder, not through caring more, through something slower and more specific than that. If what you just heard names something you have been carrying without a map, there is a resource in the description built exactly for the next step. It's called the Guilt Loop Reset, a 7-day journal designed around one thing, not eliminating the guilt, but interrupting the loop. 5 minutes a day. No spiritual bypassing, no toxic positivity, just a structured practice that begins to work with the pattern you now have a name for. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, naming a pattern is not the same as ending it. That matters to say clearly, because this audience has heard enough promises about how understanding something will change everything and watched it not change everything. Understanding why the guilt works this way does not make the guilt disappear tonight, but something does shift. Something small and real. When the guilt fires, and it will fire, there is now a different relationship available to that moment. Instead of, this guilt is the truth about who I am as a parent, something closer to, this is the pattern. This is the system doing what it was trained to do, not as an excuse, not as a bypass, but as a distinction. Because here is what chronic guilt has taken from you that you may not have fully accounted for. It has taken your ability to accurately assess yourself. When the guilt fires equally for the moments you got wrong and the moments you got right, When it fires before anything has happened and after everything has been repaired, it is no longer giving you reliable information. You have been using a broken instrument to measure yourself, and the measurement has been running low not because you are actually failing, but because the instrument cannot read anything else. The parent who runs the 3 a.m. inventory every night, going over every moment, cataloging every failure, is not a parent who cares more than other parents. They are a parent whose nervous system learned that the audit is what keeps things safe. That is not the same as caring. That is caring that has been trapped inside a loop. And releasing the loop, slowly, with the right tools, over time, does not mean releasing the caring. The caring was never in the guilt. The caring is in the fact that you are here, reading the signs, recognizing the pattern, still trying to understand what is happening so that something can shift. That is the caring. That has always been the caring. The guilt was just living rent-free on top of it. If you want to take what's here further, the guilt loop reset in the description is where this goes next. 7 days, 5 minutes, a different relationship with the loop. Which of the 7 signs hit the hardest for you? And how long do you think it's been running? Here is what you came in carrying and what you are allowed to put down. Not all of it, but this part. The idea that the guilt means the caring. That the louder it is, the more you love them. That a parent who felt less of it would be a parent who tried less. That equation is not accurate. It is an equation your nervous system built in a moment, or a childhood, when it needed to believe that vigilance was the same as love. The parents who cross into chronic guilt, the ones who match all 7 signs, are not the parents who care the most. They are the parents who were taught at some point before this that rest is dangerous, that the moment they stop scanning, something breaks, and so they never stop scanning. And they called the scanning love. What you can know, leaving this video, is specific. The guilt that doesn't release after repair, that is a pattern, not a verdict. The guilt that fires before anything has happened, that is anxiety, not conscience. The guilt that is loudest in the quiet, that is a nervous system with no off switch, not evidence of failure. And the belief that releasing it means losing the caring, that is the loop talking. That is the most sophisticated thing chronic guilt does. Convince you that it is necessary. It is not necessary. You can care deeply about your child and not run a nightly inventory of your failures. You can take your mistakes seriously and not carry them past the repair. You can be a parent who is paying attention without the paying attention becoming a permanent emergency. Not perfect, not finished, not healed all the way through, but enough, right now, as you are, to begin the work of putting the audit down. That is not small. That is, in fact, where everything else starts.